What is cracking, Hope Nation? It is yet again your friendly neighborhood Kevin Hines, and I am here today on the Hindsights podcast with a special guest. Francesca Reicherter is the founder and president of Inspiring My Generation, a nonprofit on a mission of suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. She is the host of Normalize the Conversation podcast. She has published 5 mental wellness workbooks, including her most recent, Your Thoughts Matter, the workbook. And she is the creator of Gracefully Chaotic, an online community of mental health empowerment. Let's just break it down. Francesca is absolutely a walking phenom. She is a powerhouse in the field, and she is changing lives wherever she goes. Francesca, it's so nice to meet you and so wonderful to have you on the podcast. Welcome to the Hindsight Podcast. Glad to have you on. How are you today?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to finally get to meet you, and I'm doing good today. I had an early start to my morning where I actually got to take time for self-care and for me, which I feel like is very rare these days. Usually I'm so much on the go, so I had a nice, slow, happy morning. How are you doing today?
I am doing well today. Thank you. And as they say, self-care is the best care. We all know that. I would love to just get right into this and ask you the first question I have. Can you please tell us about the moment you decided to create Inspiring My Generation, the 501(c)(3, and what drove you to turn your pain into a mission for mental health advocacy?
So, I actually started Inspiring My Generation as a blog when I was 12. It was a way to I was struggling with emotions and people weren't talking about it, which is a totally normal human thing. Yet in middle school, everyone made fun of you if you cried or if you had emotion other than joy and happiness. So I felt really lost and isolated, and I wanted to talk about it. I started a blog, didn't catch on back then because blogging wasn't a thing yet. And then years later, I was 20 years old. I ended up in a psych ward after my third suicide attempt and realized how many other people never had a conversation on mental health, how many other people needed that validation, that support that 12-year-old me was trying to get with that blog. So I decided I wanted to do something about that. And I had Inspiring My Generation, the blog that I kept doing on and off for the past almost 10 years at that point, and decided it'd be really cool to turn it into something bigger. So I got out of the psych ward, spent a year learning everything I could about my own mental health and what I was going through and how I could use that to help others, and then filed the 501(c)(3 on March 13th, 2020, in honor of my uncle who passed away from suicide, as a way to start that conversation and creating resources that I wish I had and that I wish he had at that time.
Wow, that is incredible that you were so astute at such a young age, at 12, to start your blog about mental health, just going through what you were going through. You did that for yourself, but eventually, at the time it is now, it reached so many people, and you've helped so many people find hope, which is incredible. Jessica, how did your personal experiences shape the way you approach mental health advocacy?
That's such a great question because I think everyone brings something unique and different to mental health advocacy, and that's what makes it so amazing is that there's a space for everyone. And for me, something that I like to bring is that authenticity of I really, really want to hear what you're thinking and what you're feeling. For so long, I felt like I didn't have a voice. I
Hmm.
felt like anytime I wanted to speak about it, people would make fun of me or tease me or bully me, invalidate me, ignore me, whatever it was. So for me, I always want to make sure that I'm listening and that I'm here and that people know maybe it's not by calling me, maybe it's by finding one of my resources, maybe it's by reading a blog, maybe it's by striking up a conversation, whatever it is, maybe there's a space where I can be listening to you. And I made sure that was very evident in my first workbook, You Are Not Alone. Whereas it's like I'm having a conversation with you and guiding you as you're doing it so that you don't feel alone in any of it.
Can you run through all the titles of your workbooks and how people can find them?
Yes, so the workbooks are You Are Not Alone, the workbook. That one is about a basic introduction of affirmations, coping skills, the language to support someone who is struggling with their mental health, to start that conversation, and coping skills. The second one is I Am, and that is learning the language to reach out for support. The third one is how are you? And that's a 30-day check-in to understand how you're feeling and how you can get through the day. The next is self-care, and that is building self-care practices that integrate into your daily life. The fifth one is your thoughts matter, and that is taking negative thoughts and shifting them to more encouraging thoughts. And you can find all of these on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Walmart, Target, any major book retailer online has them.
That is incredible. Wow, I love hearing this. You're doing so much to change so many lives, which is really, really powerful. What, if you will, were some of the largest or biggest challenges you faced in the early stages of starting your nonprofit? And importantly, so how did you overcome them?
That there were so many different challenges, and I think the very first one was believing in myself. At that point, I had, within the past year, had been in a psych ward, been struggling to try to find a reason to stay alive. And now I want to be someone who encourages other people to want to stay alive. And that felt very kind of conflicting in my brain because I was still trying to hold on. So it took a lot of just getting through that. I deserve to be here. I am worthy of having a voice, and I can use that voice to help others and not kind of beating down on myself for not feeling like I am the professional in it. I am going
Mm.
through it with you in that lived experience. Another big thing was not knowing what to do or where to start, and I feel like that was very paralyzing. I had this idea. I was 20 at the time when I started putting it together, 21 when I launched it, and I had this idea that anyone who was an entrepreneur, who started a business, who started a nonprofit, they knew exactly what they were doing in every step of the way, and I felt like I knew nothing about what was happening. I had no idea what was happening to me, what I was feeling. I had no idea how to file the paperwork, so everything felt very overwhelming. So in the beginning, the biggest challenges were that doubt, and to overcome it, I took it day by day, and I stopped thinking about that big picture of 5 years down the line, I want it to look like this. Just what can I do today? And take it one very baby step at a time. And I think the other was asking people for help and reaching out for support, whether that was for my own mental health and needing a place to just have someone validate what I'm going through, check in with me, help me find resources, or if it was finding resources for the nonprofit, for starting a business, a mentor, constantly reaching out for support in whatever avenue helped me a lot.
Well, it's pertinent tools for really anybody in the situation you were in to move forward through life and go through something similar. I really appreciate that. You mentioned that in some of your previous works, you've mentioned that you masked your pain with high energy and laughter. How has that evolved today? And what have you learned about managing your emotions more openly and more honestly?
Yeah. I do have that tendency of that when I'm starting to struggle a lot, I tend to try to put on that brave face that we think we have to a lot of times. And I take it to an extreme of very, very high energy because I want everyone to know that I'm fine and I want to convince myself that I'm fine. And for me, that often looks like going from feeling completely drained on the inside to making sure every single person knows I'm in the room. So it's that really high energy. And I've learned one, I still often don't realize it, but I know to make sure people around me know that that is something that I might do.
Mm.
So if I suddenly become super, super high energy, life of the party all the time, check in with me and ask me how I'm feeling. Usually my friends are able to see that shift in my personality and are able to talk to me about it. Another big thing that I've learned though is to journal every day and write down what I'm feeling and what's been happening because sometimes I don't realize I'm doing it. It's just happening behind the scenes because I've
Yeah.
so conditioned myself to think that you have to just be fine and put on that smile all the time.
Mm.
So, journaling and checking in with myself and seeing that I'm actually feeling a little more low energy than usual. I'm feeling a little bit more tired or drained. Maybe I'm burnt out. I don't want to do the same things that I usually like to do. So, by kind of
Mm.
tracking it in my journal, I've been able to see that, oh, I'm about to start masking, and how can I start a conversation? I tend to post about it online and start opening it then instead of allowing it to just fester behind the scenes until it disconnects into I go from high energy in front of everybody and then completely on the floor, not wanting to be here anymore when I'm alone.
Wow. I I have to say I really appreciate your candor in your experiences, and I know that's going to help a lot of people that are going through very similar things, which is really crucial, and which is why we do the Hindsights podcast in the first place. Francesca, tell us all about what the encouragement card program is and what impact do you see this program having on hospitalized patients?
Yeah. So part of Inspiring My Generation is our encouragement card program. This started as I was in the psych ward and the walls were beige. And it was kind of like peeling a little bit the walls. There was no color. You were sleeping in a hospital bed and there was bed next to you, a curtain over the bathroom, and the windows were so like thick that there was no light. So it just felt so, it felt darker in my environment than it did in my head, which I didn't think
Mm.
was possible. And I really just needed some sort of color or encouragement or happiness or something in that moment where everything felt like the darkness would never end. So post psych ward, to kind of just keep my hands busy, just so that I wouldn't hurt myself, I started coloring cards. So I would make cards for myself with messages of "You are not alone, you are enough, you're gonna get through this, I believe in you," all the things I needed to hear. And then one day, about maybe a year and a half later, I had 100 cards in front of me, and I thought it would be really cool to send these to. It would have been really cool to receive that when I was in the psych ward. Maybe I can send it to where I was. I sent it to the place where I was, didn't hear back, had a feeling that maybe this could be helpful. Let me try another place. So I reached out to another place, sent some sample cards with a letter. They loved it, asked for a monthly donation. It's now been 3 years. We've done over 20,000 handmade cards among 5 different
Ooh,
facilities every month. And the goal,
wow.
yeah, and the goal is to bring that little bit of hope, encouragement, and color that I desperately needed at that time to someone else. And that reminder that while I was in there, I felt like all this shame that what if someone finds out that I was here? What am I going to do? So to have a card from someone on the outside that's like, I see you, you're still important, and it's okay. You're not alone, and you're still valid and important and worthy, even in the psych ward. I think would have helped change that fear and shame I had coming out. So it's hoping to provide that extra piece of support and letting people know that they're not alone and it gets better and that there's hope and light in the world.
Is there a way you get feedback from sending these cards? Have you ever heard any messages of thanks?
So I hear them usually from the hospitals. I had one hospital memorial. I would go and I'd drop them off to the security guard at the psych ward every month, and he stopped me one month and said that there's been so many times patients have come back and got treatment again, and they referenced that that card reminded them that it was okay to get help. So he's like, a lot of people who would have attempted again instead came and got more help. So I'd love to get more feedback to see how it is, but a lot of people don't always share that feedback, but the
Yeah.
hospitals do give me a lot of feedback. And I think that day I went home and I cried a lot, just how much I wish I had received that maybe after my first attempt or second attempt instead of ending up in a place that just felt so isolating.
But this idea that over 20,000 cards shared, that really means, I hope you know what that means, Francesca. That's 20,000 lives changed. That's incredible. That's really incredible. I'm really moved by the work you're doing. This is a lot of this is new for me. I'm learning as we talk, but this is really a beautiful story you've created from your pain, which is just so incredible. I love hearing it. Some great news. You're currently studying psychology. How has pursuing your degree changed, if it has, your approach to your work with inspiring my generation?
Yeah, I'm doing my master's in clinical psych right now. I'm on my last year, finally, and I
Wow.
finally started seeing clients, and that's made a big difference. When I started Inspiring My Generation, it was really a lot of the podcast episodes, the encouragement cards, the workbooks all came of a place of what I needed at the time. And I took stuff I was doing for myself and used it for other people. And I think the further going down the program, the more I realized how different each person is. So a lot of it is based on what I needed at the time. The workbooks are all based on whatever thing I'm learning for myself that year. So this year coming out in May will be boundaries because I'm working on boundaries for myself.
Okay.
But instead of it being just worksheets that are targeted at me and the boundaries I need, I look at it more from different types of people might need different types of boundaries. So how can I expand it more to fit every person or fit as a guide for every person instead of just
Mm.
fitting toward me? So it's helped to change my mindset in the creation of everything, which has been really interesting because I never realized, I think until I started talking to other clients or other people with lived experience, how different our stories are and how with so many similarities, what we need might look a little bit different and can make such a big impact in our
Mm.
healing journeys. For example, creating coping skills. I have so many friends who love to run. I love to run my mouth, love to run a credit card. Do not like to go for a run. It's not my thing. So, but I like to walk. And now, if someone talked to me about coping skills and said running was like the exercise version and that was it, I would have been like, okay, movement doesn't work for me. But when we change the conversation to make it more specific to each person and movement, running works for some people, swimming, my grandmother, swimming is great for her and her friends. For me, I like to go for a walk. My brother, he likes to go for a hike. So it's different for each person. And if we stop looking at it as a one comprehensive thing and as each person individually, it makes an impact. And that's kind of how I'm trying to shift my work so that
Mm.
it's specific to each person and it's not just this one idea. Did that make sense?
That made great sense. I love that you asked me. You're so raw and real and honest. It's great. No, it made perfect sense. What role, I guess my next question, what role does storytelling play in your personal advocacy, and how do you feel sharing your story publicly? How do you feel it's helped people heal or connect with others?
For me, storytelling has been the way I've gained power over the darkness in my brains. For so long, I felt like this narrative of how other people described me or what other people looking from the outside saw in what they would use to describe me and how they would view my story was my story. And storytelling has helped me gain more control over it and rewrite that narrative of
Mm.
I'm not helpless. I can get through this. And just
Mm.
shifting the entire way I view myself. I'm not a damsel in distress. I'm someone who needed tools, didn't have access to it, and is now fighting to make sure other people have access to it. So storytelling has helped me just find that sense of confidence within myself. And it's also helped me connect with people because maybe my entire story doesn't resonate with you, but maybe there'll be one piece that does. And that helps form that connection of let's talk about it. There's some kind of vulnerability there when we find one piece of the hardest time of our lives that may
Mm.
relate. So it's helped me form connections and open a space for vulnerability for others while also taking back control of what I thought my outcome was going to be and to redefine who I am and what I want life to look like.
Love that. I think anyone can learn from that one question and that one response, really. What is it like balancing your own mental wellness with the responsibility of leading a nonprofit and sharing your story so openly?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I was just at a conference. You were there a couple of days later. I think you spoke on a Thursday. I spoke on
Yeah.
a Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
I wish I remembered what day I spoke. But when I go to the events, I'm always so excited to get there. I love speaking. I have the time of my life. As soon as I step away from that room, all the energy in me is drained.
Mm.
And I never realized before how much it took to I love sharing my story. I'll do it all day, every day. But the bigger the group is, the more energy it drains from me.
Yeah.
But realize how much it takes to not just feel vulnerable enough and comfortable enough to be so openly vulnerable about the worst days of your life and almost reliving it over and over again, but also creating that space for other people to be vulnerable with you and to share the worst days of their lives or their loved ones' lives and being
Yeah.
able to hold space for them as well. That's been really difficult managing that and trying to be the business person, right? The young adult professional who puts on that smile and is perfect all the time, And then also being a student and trying to always be learning from everyone. So having that confidence that I know enough to be in the room, but learning enough that I don't know anything yet and I need everyone to teach me. So, like, all these different messages have really been making it very difficult. And for me, I've learned the biggest thing to help navigate that mix is to make time for myself right after. And to be honest with people, I started in my presentations lately of saying how when I close my eyes and when I'm talking about it, I can still feel that moment. Feelings that, feelings from my body, from my brain, from my heart, all of it is still very real to me. And it's not something that I'm so far detached from, even though it's been years. I try to bring that more honesty into it so people know that it is something that I'm feeling, as well as creating space throughout the day beforehand. I tend not to go to mini presentations at conferences, ones that I really want to go to, but I know that the overexposure of all of it, while that my brain is trying to decide what role it's taking, I need to work on that. But so that I can exist enough to be there and smile through the moment, and then finding time for myself right afterwards. For me, I've been calling my grandmother and FaceTiming her, and I walk her through the whole presentation and I tell her of how everyone else responded and ask her about her day. And it just helps take all of the like pain from it and all the bad moments that I was feeling and bringing into this joy of my grandmother getting to see the growth from when I was 12 years old saying, I'm going to write a blog, to now being in my mid 20s speaking about the emotions that I felt like I had to hide away and couldn't have a voice for so many years. So, in long conclusion, my grandmother helps me.
That is almost like your own personal designed grounding technique
Yeah.
that you have created for yourself to come down from those the speaking moments to a level playing field. While you're dipping in that low, you're bringing yourself back up purposefully. You're being responsible in your pain. That's incredible. I love that. I want to ask you a question because I don't think we got to this beforehand. But when was the first time you heard my personal story, and if it did, how did it affect you?
So, I was watching, I think it was on Instagram Reels a couple years ago. It might have been Britt Bronson posting something. And I saw your story and how you talked about kind of the moments afterwards on the way kind of like down, how everything shifted in your mindset, in your mind, and then kind of what it was like years later to be talking about it. And I wish I could remember the specific content of it, but I remember that feeling in my brain of, oh my God, someone else gets it. Someone else knows of what it was like to be like in that worst moment and then waiting, kind of like trying to think of the words to describe how it felt, because it was one of the very first times I felt kind of heard in my story and in that
Hmm.
shift from I don't want to be here anymore to um am I going to be okay? What's happening? Am I alive? Am I not alive? To
Yeah.
now I want to use my story to help others. And I think I didn't know much at that time about people advocating for mental health. I was still very new and getting to learn more about it. And it helped me realize that there is a space for us to talk about this and that how many lives you've saved, maybe I'll be able to do that too. And it kind of gave me that model of this is who I could become. So for me, a lot of it was like, this is who I can become. So I was just very
Oh,
inspired by you.
I really appreciate that. That means the absolute world. You bet. All right, Francesca, this is the final question I have for you, and I would love to learn what are some of the most powerful lessons you've learned from your own journey that you hope to pass on to others who are struggling so deeply with their brain and mental health.
That's a really great question. I'd say one of the most important lessons that I've learned is if you can just make it through this moment, that's all that matters right now. So right now, I think there's so many moments throughout my life that felt like it was the worst moment ever. And there were so many times where my response to that was to harm myself. And
Hmm.
I've learned that if I can just get through that moment and take it genuinely 1 second at a time and then 1 minute at a time, I would start counting to 30 and just 30 seconds reset, 30 seconds reset. So in those really difficult moments where it feels like this moment's lasting forever, if you can just hold on for that second, those 30 seconds, that 1 minute, eventually you won't be in that moment anymore. And then you will be able to get through it. I don't know if that makes as much sense as it does in my brain, but for me, it's been genuinely count to 30 seconds, get out of that very moment, and then breathe. And then do another 30 seconds and just hold on until you get that point where you can then reach out for support, because that was the other big thing for me. It wasn't just about I was getting the ability to exist in that moment, but then feeling like I could reach out for support and know that no matter what, whether it feels like I'm the only one in the world who understands what I'm going through, or if it feels like I don't have anyone to reach out to. There's so many people out there who get it, who will listen, who will be there, and maybe it's an actual person that I can call or go visit. Maybe it's a podcast that I'm listening to, or a book that I'm reading, or a social media account online that I'm following. There's something out there that's going to remind me that I'm not alone. And it's
Yeah.
just counting to 30 to get through that moment so that I can find that support.
Mm. So yours is that counting to 30 every 30 seconds to get past that one moment. For me, it's that finding a way to be here tomorrow and every day after that. But for both of us, it's about really living in the present moment and recognizing that you're worthy, you matter, you're important, and suicide is never the solution to your problem. It is the problem. Suicidal ideations are the greatest liars we know. We don't have to listen to them. And suicide does not, will not, and cannot ever take the pain away. It just makes it solely impossible for things to ever get better. But with time, energy, effort, and hard work, because nothing good ever came without it. And you've expressed on this podcast how much hard work you've done to change your life. With hard work, things can always and will get better. Francesca, you've been an incredible guest here on the Hindsights podcast. I couldn't be more grateful to have you on. I'm so appreciative of your time, and I wish you the very best. And I do hope we get to meet in person someday soon. I hope you get to meet my wife when we're at a conference one of these days, because the work you are doing is empowering, moving, and incredible. Keep it up. You are changing lives. And for everyone who wants to follow you or find you on social medias, where should they go?
Yeah, so on Instagram, you go to @freicherter. That's FREICHERTER. Or you can go to Inspiring My Generation, and that's actually the same on every social media platform. Thank you, Kevin, so much for having me today and for all that you do. You're incredible.